Joining me now is a bipartisan panel of secretaries of state. We are really excited about this segment. It's really important information. The Democrat from Arizona, Adrian Fontes, Democrat from Michigan, Jocelyn Benson, Republican from New Hampshire, David Scanlan, and Republican from Kentucky, Michael Adams. Thanks to all of you for being here. I want to start by just setting the scene here. Obviously, we have all seen the violent rhetoric increasing in this year's election. And I know that obviously there's been a lot of focus and concern about the 2 assassination attempts against former President Trump. Secretary Benson, let me ask you, how concerned are you about your state election workers' safety, and what new steps are you taking to try to keep them safe?
Well, thanks for having all of us for this important conversation, Kristen. This is a really critical moment for the future of our democracy, and we're all both on edge and ready for anything. Just today, we've gotten reports about the potential for disturbances on Election Day throughout the northern part of our state. We're ready, and we have partnerships with law enforcement and others to protect the people who protect democracy. We've also passed a new law to make it a crime to threaten election workers while administering elections. So we'll be ready to address any disruptions if they occur. But we're also encouraging people to respect the process, respect democracy, respect your fellow neighbors as they cast their ballots in the historic election. And let's have a smooth and secure election day.
Secretary Scanlan, let me turn to you next. How concerned are you about the safety of election workers, and what steps have you taken since 2020 to make this a safer endeavor for election workers?
Well, hello, Kristen. We're fortunate in New Hampshire that we're a small, friendly state, and I am not aware of any threats in polling places that are being spoken about publicly, but we're not being complacent about that either. We've worked with local election officials to make sure that locally they can deal with issues that might occur at the polling place, as they have in every election in the past. But we're also working closely with our state law enforcement partners, the Attorney General's office, and we have a plan if something occurs that is broader in scale that we need to be concerned about. And then, if necessary, we are willing to pull in federal partners to work on broader issues.
Secretary Fontes, are you tracking any active threats against election workers right now?
Thanks, Kristen. We are not at liberty to discuss any of the specifics of our security profile, but we have the capacity to track not only threats from around locally the state, but you know, our borders are open across the United States of America, and oftentimes, as we've seen in some of the prosecutions, threats will come from outside of any of our states into it. So this is a national issue. It's a national concern. We do have to get back to some rational conversations based in reality, based in data, and based in facts. And so while we won't be, again, discussing any of the specifics, we certainly are being as vigilant as possible. And we do have threat assessment folks not only in our office as security space, but operating directly with the Arizona Counterterrorism Information Center and other state, local, and federal law enforcement and intelligence gathering agencies.
Secretary Adams, how are you preparing in this regard to keep people safe? And do you feel any concerns for your own personal safety?
Well, I'm pleased to say that this cycle, it's been very smooth so far. We've not had threats of violence against me, let alone against poll workers or other election officials. We spend months and months preparing for this. We've been doing security prep since the summer. We've been working with the federal government, obviously the state police and the Attorney General in our state, but also in Kentucky, the sheriff, the county sheriff of each of our 120 counties is on the County Board of Elections. And so that ensures both adequate security from the federal and the state government, but also local knowledge.
All right. Well, let me, Secretary Benson, ask you this. And if you want to respond to what you just heard from Secretary Adams, please do so. But let me read what you wrote on X yesterday. Quote, expect bad actors to take minor issues and use them to fuel baseless conspiracy theories in order to further their own agenda. How are you planning to counter those types of actions?
Well, we all have to plan to counter the misinformation that is escalating, particularly in battleground states where the races for president are particularly close. And we all have to do that by being critical consumers of information in this moment. Well, a lot of what you're going to see on social media, particularly over the next 3 to 5 days, is potentially going to be driven by political agendas, not factual agendas. So go to your local election officials' websites. We've set up a website in Michigan, michigan.gov/electionfacts, to go through and address a lot of the baseless conspiracy theories that are metastasizing. And when I wrote that, I was particularly frustrated of basic minor things that are isolated and rare occurrences in any election becoming metastasized by bad actors who are trying to use small incidents to create a bigger issue and spread misinformation. And that's why all of us are the best line of defense against that spread. We should stand up to being fooled by bad actors and instead be all empowered with trusted factual information about our elections.
And Secretary Benson, just a very quick follow-up. Do you have any concerns about your own personal safety?
Yeah, in fact, last week or a few weeks ago, whenever Elon Musk first started attacking me on X, the first thing I did before responding with facts and the truth was to call my security team and make sure my family was safe. Because unfortunately for all of us, standing up to bullies and fighting back against misinformation in this moment does mean putting ourselves in the metaphorical line of fire, and that's quite unnerving. It's created a state of hypervigilance for all of us, but it doesn't deter us from speaking the truth and making sure citizens have the tools they need to cast their vote in this historical election.
Secretary Fontes, what about you? Have you received any personal threats?
I have, but we will, in Arizona, categorize any threats against myself, my family, or anybody else as we do with any other election official, that something has happened to an election official. We are, as Secretary Benson indicated, not going to shy away from this fight. And we're certainly not going to be playing ourselves to be the victims of any of this stuff. These are folks who want to undermine confidence and that we as Americans have in one another. And the vast majority of these sorts of misconceptions, conspiracy theories, and lies are originating outside of the United States of America, but they're amplified by folks here in this country oftentimes, and that can eventually result in the sorts of bad behavior and threats that we see and have experienced. And that's really where the problem lies, where you've got Americans acting as useful idiots to our foreign enemies. And so what I'm hoping is that we can do what has been suggested: be better consumers of information, be smarter, and believe in one another as Americans before we just start casting aspersions and doubting with no facts behind those doubts.
Secretary Scanlan, pick up on that point and also let us know, have you received any personal threats?
No, I have not, and I am not aware of any election officials in New Hampshire that have. Again, we're a relatively small state, and so it is very easy for me to get out and speak to groups about transparency in the election process, and inform voters and concerned citizens about the checks and balances that we have in every polling place. And I have made an effort to speak with any group, regardless of political affiliation or theories about how elections operate. And I've been very open and very welcoming, and I think that has tempered the positions of some in the state. I would be surprised if we have any significant issues, but that's not to say that we're not prepared if something does happen.
And we should let our viewers know we unfortunately did lose the connection with Secretary Adams. We're working to get it back, but we will obviously continue this conversation. Secretary Scanlan, let me follow up with you, because earlier this year during the Democratic primary, there was that fake robocall that basically mimicked President Biden's voice, confused a lot of people. How do you counter those types of threats that come from AI that are meant to confuse? Secretary Fontes is talking about the quote unquote useful idiots who don't serve to kind of cut off misinformation where it starts. Are you prepared to counter that?
I think so. The Biden robocall was a wake-up call to really the entire country about the potential for AI deepfakes. And while that particular event was pretty unsophisticated, it allowed us to work on messaging. Our Attorney General's office jumped out very quickly and informed the public of what happened and the fact that it was illegal, a form of voter suppression. And in the end, they were able to track the individual down, and that person was recently fined $6 million by a federal agency. But knowing that now, we have been talking about the impact of AI very publicly and openly with the voting population. We've been taking the lull before Election Day to just talk to the voters frankly about the misinformation and disinformation that they should expect to see, and rely on their local election officials and their state election officials as reliable sources of election information. And if they hear something about a campaign they question, call the candidate. Yeah. There are ways to check on the information that is out there.
Secretary Adams, I believe we got you back. Yes, we did. Weigh in on this point. We're talking about the threat of AI as well as misinformation and disinformation. How are you preparing to counter that as we get closer to Election Day?
Well, we're already dealing with it. I've spent the last 24 hours dealing with a misleading video on TikTok that got 19 million views and led people to falsely believe that we had vote switching. We don't. We don't even use voting machines. We use optical scanners that read paper ballots that are marked by hand. In some instances, we have ballot marking devices that will print a ballot, but the voter can see the ballot, make sure it's right before voting it. So that's the stuff that I'm dealing with, not AI, fortunately.
It's just extraordinary that it's something that you've been dealing with that recently as the past 24 hours. Secretary Benson, let me ask you, you announced charges against a Chinese national who illegally cast a ballot, though the ballot has already been tabulated, cannot be retrieved. How concerned are you that people will use incidents like that to claim that there's broader fraud, that the system is rigged?
Yeah, I think any kernel can be used and metastasized, and that's what we're seeing right now. In this case, it was a rare and isolated occurrence. It was caught, it was swiftly dealt with, and that person is going to be prosecuted for lying multiple times and breaking the law. That's the way this works. When there is any type of fraud in the process, it is rare, and when it is caught, we seek justice, not just in Michigan, but around the country. And so this is where, again, it's incumbent upon all of us to be critical consumers of information in this moment and not be fooled by efforts to take isolated incidents and make them more that they are in an effort to sow seeds of doubt and cause people to lose rightly placed faith or confidence in our elections and ultimately their voice. And that's really what this is about. There's an effort afoot, as it has been for years now, a concerted effort to try to diminish citizens' confidence in their voice, in their votes, and in our democracy. And we're going to see more isolated incidents in the days ahead, or maybe even the weeks ahead, being used to further that agenda. Don't be fooled by it. Get the facts, know what's true and what's not, and know that all bipartisan professional election officials all across the country are working day and night to protect the integrity of every vote in every election.
Secretary Fontes, I want to ask you about some news out of your state, the recent ruling there, a judge ordering you to effectively turn over the names of more than 200,000 individuals who registered to vote without providing proof of citizenship. You've said you're worried that releasing those names could lead to threats and harassment against them. Can you update us on your next steps? Do you plan to release those names by the Monday deadline, or are you going to appeal that decision?
Well, we are going to appeal the decision. In fact, I think it's already been filed. But let me just level set really quickly. Arizona, like every other state in the union, not only requires an affidavit signature under penalty of perjury that a person is a citizen, but we have a higher standard here that demands that our voters provide documented proof of citizenship, a birth certificate, a passport, a naturalization certificate, in order to vote in state and local races. That's the higher burden that we're not sure if a lot of these folks have met. So they've all met the same standard that every other voter in the United States of America has met. I want to be very clear about that because we don't have widespread non-citizen voting here in Arizona, nor do we have it anywhere else in the country. That being said, I think it's ill-advised at this stage of the game to be able to be forced to release the names of folks who some people might say are non-citizen voters. because of the potential for harassment. So we're going to fight like heck to protect those voters' information.
We're almost out of time. If we could go around the horn very quickly, 10 seconds each, starting with you, Secretary Adams, how long should voters expect the results to take in your state?
Well, in Kentucky, we count pretty fast. I think we'll have 98% of the vote counted by 10 p.m. Eastern. We vote mostly in person. We have a very limited mail-in vote, and we're able to process them before the polls close. And so we count pretty quick.
All right, Secretary Scanlan.
In our state, it's a start-to-finish process. I expect we'll have results being announced by 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. There might be some outliers that come in later than that, but it will be on the day of the election.
Secretary Benson, a little bit longer in Michigan?
Potentially. We have pre-processing and tabulation happening now of the 2 million ballots that are being mailed in. So we anticipate we'll have the bulk, the vast majority of ballots tabulated by 8 p.m. on election night. And it may take a little bit longer for any ballots that come in the late hours just before 8 p.m., but they count just as much as the early ones. And we're going to make sure every ballot is counted and hope to have those results in as soon as possible. We'll have an update for folks around 9 o'clock Eastern on election night.
All right. And finally, Secretary Fontes, what are you anticipating?
Well, the networks are going to project when they project. We don't control that, but official results will come in Arizona as they always have, sometime within 10 to 13 days after Election Day.
All right. Well, there you have it. I cannot thank you all enough for this segment, for the work that you do. We know that you're heading into an incredibly busy and critical stretch. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.